Hey everyone, welcome to Workshop 2, Working Effectively for Your Child's School. This section is just a small part of our overall workshop. My name's Fiona Moore and I'm one of the consultants who's been working in the Families for Inclusive Education project with CREW. The section I'm going to be talking about is Foundations for Building a Collaborative Relationship. Remembering at times there are many challenges to overcome to ensure your child has an inclusive education, and this section is just a small part of our overall workshop. I'd just like to bring your attention to the webinar we just recently did and is up on our website called Communication with School, Building a Foundation for Partnerships, and that will give you a bit more of an in-depth understanding of what is possible with the school working together. Also, I'd like to draw your attention to the Inclusive Adjustments resource that's just recently been made available on our CREW website under the FFIE's Classroom Learning tab, because adjustments are a very big part of the collaborative relationship and working with your child. So what I'd like you to do now is have a think about a collaborative relationship with a school. So parents are valued partners. So what does a collaborative relationship look like and feel like to you? And then the other thing I want you to do is think about what a collaborative relationship would look like and feel like to the teachers and the school. So what do you think are the key ingredients to have that successful relationship? Just take a few minutes and write some things down. And now I'd like to draw you to a little video. It's only 1.5 minutes long and it's about what is reasonable to expect under the disability standards for education. So with regards to law, what is regarded as reasonable and what sort of consultation is expected? So what should you also know? Now the standards were written in 2005 and they are a response to the Disability Discrimination Act. So please enjoy this little video.
Australian society is diverse,
enriched by people from different cultures, religions and ethnic groups.
Our education system reflects our diverse society.
When society changes, education changes too.
Today, everyone should be supported in their education,
and Australian teachers aim to meet all students' learning needs.
It is unlawful to discriminate against a person because they have disability.
This is the law.
Under the Disability Discrimination Act.
the educational rights of people with disability
are defined in the Disability Standards for Education.
These standards specify how students with disability
can receive an equitable education.
This resource shows how the Disability Standards for Education
can be useful to you.
So welcome back. So reasonable adjustments, as we said on the video, said required to be made by law, and this does apply to every aspect of school life from enrolment to graduation. There is an expectation of consultation under the law that students and their families are consulted in planning reasonable adjustments. Now there's 5 areas here that I'd just like to briefly talk about, and just to emphasise there is that expectation of consultation within the system, and so even within each of these, and especially within each of these areas. So within enrolment, this is basically saying that every child has the right to be enrolled at their local school and that adjustments are made accordingly, and that they are going to have the same opportunities as every other child within the school. So you'll often hear the language on the same basis, and this is really important within participation, the next one as well. Now when we're thinking about participation, this doesn't only include within the classroom, it's outside the classroom. It is important to realise that the program and activities need to be sufficiently flexible to enable all students to participate, that when necessary, assistance be given to a child with a disability to enable them to participate, and that everything is designed to include all students in the school. There's also the expectation of consultation when we think about student support services, and this is really important because this is the area of the department's provided funding and staff, etc., to support you, and they should be consulting with you as they're helping support your child in the classroom. So the important thing to realise is that not only should they be providing those specialised services, if possible, in OT, physio, etc., but also different specialised equipment that would be needed, and also ensure that there is trained support staff available to support them. This does include interpreters and note takers. Also, teacher aides are made available for students with disability. Harassment and victimisation is another one of the standards, and that everyone should be free from harassment within the school. That the providers have procedures and codes of conduct for the staff and students to explicitly prohibit harassment and victimisation of a student. There needs to be individual strategies provided and adjustments made for a specific student. And whenever there's any handling of any cases or complaints of harassment and victimisation, which can and your child is involved in any way, then it is really important that parents, you are consulted. And finally, the standard of curriculum development, accreditation and delivery. So when we're thinking about this is to ensure that at all aspects of the curriculum, including the assessment and certification, is on the same basis as every other child. It's important to remember that the materials should be adjusted to ensure that there is that access and to the assessment as well as the program. And that there are varying delivery modes of learning to ensure that activities take account of intended educational outcomes. And the course or program study materials are made available in a format that is appropriate for your child. So activities that aren't conducted in the classroom, such as field trips, industry site visits and work placements, that they are, of course, all part of the broader educational program. So it's important to realise the main thing is you have every right to be consulted and that adjustments can be made. So the other very important document is the Parent and Community Engagement Framework, and this came out in the beginning of 2009, released by the Department of Education. It's based on every student with disability succeeding, and it provides specific focus on students with disability. So there's 5 key elements in this framework: communication, partnership with parents, community collaboration, school culture, and decision making. And I guess the engagement, what's really important to emphasise is that the need for you to be involved and engaged in the school. This could be through tuck shops, it could be through PNCs, it could be through libraries, and it also can be through supporting your child in their schoolwork. The research has shown that parents who are engaged in their child's schooling, the results are overwhelmingly positive in helping and supporting any child, whether they have a disability or not, through that parent engagement in their learning. As I said, it can take many different forms depending on the parent and student needs, the reason for the engagement and the expected outcomes, but the investment is certainly worthwhile. Parents can't really make inclusion happen on their own, so we do need educators and we need to bring them along to work with us to pursue that vision for inclusive education for our children. And this should be done through collaborative, or can be done through collaborative relationships. So the next little sections, just to lighten it a little bit, is on how when we are communicating, sometimes we're misheard, and the importance of having an understanding that not only do we say things and teachers sometimes mishear us, teachers will say things and we certainly mishear them as well. So I've just got a couple of examples here in a minute to talk about, to have a look at. This information did initially come from understood.org. So when we're looking at this, when teachers say, what do we hear? So the principal says, have you thought about going back to work? And you might think they're saying to you, oh, she thinks I'm an anxious mother with too much time on my hands. Or the teacher aide might say, she was really tired this morning when she came in. And you might think she's saying to you, we never go out because of her difficulties with fatigue. We never do the things other families do. When we do, you have a go at me. You're telling me off. The teacher might say, his teacher aide does read with him. I have 29 other children in the class to think about. You quite rightly may be thinking, well, don't you see my child as your responsibility? And here's some more. The hoses could say, you're not entitled to a Rolls-Royce service. We have limited resources that we must allocate fairly. You might think they're actually saying to you, you're a greedy, pushy, selfish parent. Or the teacher says, I know he's lashing out, but that is what childish children with autism do. You don't see my son. You don't recognize him as an individual. Or, it's Mrs. Smith on the phone. Are you in? And you think, the whole office thinks I'm a problem. This can often not be the case. The principal wants to give you time. So they're ensuring that there is time to be able to support you. So it's really important that we don't jump to conclusions. And it happens the other way too. So the parents can come into school and the teachers might hear, at your school, some of the children with disabilities are getting bullied. You don't value any of the work I've been doing on positive behaviour support. Or you might say, have you followed up on the changes to my son's ICP that we talked about at the meeting? This parent doesn't even think I can do my job properly. I'm working hard enough. Or you might say, I'll bring in all of my research on Fragile X syndrome. She doesn't even think I have the skills or care enough to do my own research. Just be mindful that when we are communicating that sometimes we don't hear what is actually meant, or we put a lot of interpretation on what is said. And that can happen with both parents and teachers. So just one thing we've got here now is our good sentence starters. So this is just different ways to approach the school or the teacher and to say things in a way to not be considered threatening in any way. So it's actually sort of asking questions to some degree. The first one, of course, could you help me to understand? So having that curious approach. What was the goal of the assignment? So trying to be a little bit creative and trying to find out what's expected of the child and what they would like your child to be able to complete. Saying things, it seems as if she has a harder time doing this rather than doing this. And maybe you could also use your reflection in COVID time of what you've experienced there. Or I've noticed that something that's worked for my child is when. And could there be opportunities for that to happen in class? And once again, you could put that in the context of the homeschooling you have been doing. Or have you considered, I'm wondering if, or, their IEP, ILP provides her with, how does that look in the classroom? How can I help or support what you are trying to achieve? So any of those are good sentence starters, so if you can have the opportunity to use them when you're having those conversations, it will be really valuable. So finally, as I said, we do have those resources and they're quite extensive, the webinar on communication and building those relationships with schools. And we also have one-on-one consultations, which if you have any questions or any concerns as far as inclusive education for your child, you're free to ring us. There's the contact number there. There are several consultants available with different expertise, and we'd all be happy to help. And I'd just like to say in conclusion that this is a project sponsored by Queensland Government, the Department of Education, and we have worked with them in some of the building of the content of these slides. Thank you.